Hi, this is Adrienne with Tarot and Tea. Today I'm talking with Jennifer. Jennifer's been an avid student and tarot reader for the last 10 years. And I invited her on the show today because she had some questions she wanted to ask about. So, Jennifer, hi, welcome.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good today. How about you?
I'm good. I'm ready to find out more about the pages and see
Okay.
how I interpret them a little bit more when I do my readings at parties.
Okay. Yeah, sure. The pages are one of those cards that I think are a nuisance for a lot of people. So yeah, I would love to talk to you more about them. Before I do, let me ask you, what do you know the pages to mean? How do you
Well,
interpret them and use them now?
I interpret them a lot as in reference to either a younger man or a young boy. I do that quite often, and it seems to relate a lot of times when I do that in my readings. And then I also feel like to some extent they're like a new beginning to something,
Hmm.
but like on a level where it's not it's something that they're already familiar with, but they're taking whatever it is like to another level, or like maybe what's the word I'm looking for, um like if there's like, say if they're already doing something but they're going to decide to like maybe do it a little bit differently or incorporate something new to enhance whatever it is that they're already doing in their life, if
Okay,
that
so
makes sense.
you're seeing the page as maybe like a new element of some sort.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And anything else?
I believe that's it. I just see them as being youthful. That's always the thing because it's a page.
Okay, great.
Mm,
So let's talk a little bit more about them. So first, we should say for people that maybe aren't that familiar with the tarot cards, the tarot cards are broken up into different sections. And so in the minor arcana, there are something called court cards, and those court cards are divided into the page, which is the first card, the knight, and the queen and the king. And so what we're talking about today are the pages, and the pages being that, I'll use your word, the youthful energy. There's the implication there in most decks you see a young child of sorts. So the obvious interpretation of the page can be thought of as a child. But if you think about it symbolically as well, we think about that idea of the child as being something that has yet to mature. It's naive, it's underdeveloped, it's curious, it's not completely grounded or committed yet, but it is something that implies something new and something like a child that needs to be nurtured or nourished if it is to, in fact, mature or develop into the next phase, say the knight, the queen, and then the king.
hmm. That was very well put. um, okay, so now like if we're going to start with them,
Mm-hmm.
we would start with the page of swords, right? Would we go, or would we go the page of swords to maybe the page of cups, stop, and then the page of wands and the page of pentacles in that order? Or we
Uh,
usually do the page of cups and then the page of swords? I'm just thinking in reference to like how you do it when the
uh,
beginning to the end.
Yeah, I mean, people have different approaches to that. My approach, I always start with fire. So I would do the page of wands, the page of cups, the page of swords, and the page of pentacles, which it actually gives me an opportunity to kind of describe the
Well, explain that.
yeah.
Yeah.
The progression of that. I mean, the wands as, and here we go. Like, actually, let me use this in terms of how we can also teach. So being that there are four different wands, each of them a specific suit, the suit itself is going to describe the kind of beginning or the emergence or the characteristic of the young child or young person. Wands I start with first because I see that fire as being inspiration. It's something that comes into being out of
Mhm.
nowhere. There's something magical about it. It's like a flash. It's sort of like, you have like a flash instinct or insight. Where does it come from? It just starts everything. That makes sense?
Can I give my 2 cents?
Sure, please.
Okay, so because see, now I see like, I do see the fire behind wands, of course, but
Hmm.
I also see wands as being very action based. So
Yes.
that's why I kind of feel like, so I begin with like either swords or cups, because I feel like it's either like a thought or a feeling first.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like you have this thought and then you get this feeling over this thought and then you get this idea to like actually put that into action. And then like the pentacles is like the what has been created from all of those different ways of feeling or thinking and taking action. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And if I could massage that a little bit and maybe
Mm-hmm.
just change the words a bit, consider that when we talk about thought, that thought is more related to swords. Swords
Yeah.
is thinking, it's analyzing, it's deducing, it's slicing and dicing between this and that. So in wands, you have it's beyond thought. And you'll know that, like, you've had an intuitive flash of insight before that you had to capture. If you think about your imagination, like what comes out of your imagination is something then that has to be captured and described. And that's where the swords, the air quality, might actually describe the initial instinct that emerges out of the unconscious or emerges out of the imagination.
Okay.
So your process is correct. And I'll talk about this process and then we'll move it back to the pages. But if you consider the wands to be the initial stage, like the emergence out of the unconscious, flash insight, then we have a feeling about that. And it's an evaluative feeling. It's like, it's a curiosity, but it's more visceral. So it's a feeling in terms of like, how do I relate to this?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a relationship that you're making. I mean, think about how many insights and instincts that you have all day long, but there are a couple that capture your attention based on that evaluation, that feeling. I mean, you think about that in terms of attraction. You meet somebody and you're like, you kind of get that that sense, that what is called like passion. And then all of a sudden you feel something about that as well. Then you develop a thought or an idea about that.
Okay.
So, and to further that, I see the suits. So we have the wands and the cups as being more unconscious, where the swords and the pentacles are conscious and rational.
Okay.
So if we move from that place of like, I feel this way, now I have to describe this feeling. I want to put it into words. I want to understand it. I want to look at it. And then I want to create, or I want to act from it.
Okay.
So while you're exactly right in saying that the wands capture action, because it is what we put our energy into, it's the endeavor, but it might not always imply that we're physically doing something.
Okay. So it's like the beginning stages of the action that might be taking place at some point through that fire that you get from the wand.
I believe so.
Okay.
And you'll read other tarotists and tarot books, that sometimes will say that cups are first, or the water element is first, that everything emerges out of, the collective unconscious, or, the water. But I think that has a little bit more of a biblical connotation, given that the water references in Genesis. So I think fire is where I go. But again, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we move from the pages and we describe this young energy, this emergence of something new in terms of the particular suit. So we have fire here, and we just deduced that fire is really action oriented. So now we have page, which is something new and curious. And you always think about kind of the quality of a child. So what do you expect when you put that together? You have a fiery, young curiosity. What are some words that you would say describe that?
Well, their actions might not necessarily be very like well thought out. They might be a little reckless, I would think. I don't know if I want to use the word rebellious, because I don't think that's sensitive, but I just feel like it's just more something that there might be a lot of mistakes that take place because of the fact that, it's just that energy that's behind it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like the mistakes part. I never thought about it like that, but sure. And do you think that they care? No, because there's just so much curiosity and fascination in both fire and in the pages. So here we have like this new emergence, something. It's a creative idea, perhaps, or a creative instinct, or just even a creative drive. I would say that it could be a little bit reckless as well, if not restless.
Okay. Yeah.
You've got little kids around you, and it's like they're bored within 10 minutes. So that energy there is the emergence of something new. Now, I should also say that the court cards, while they may reflect an individual, like another person, they also reflect that quality of the person that is emerging within them. So for example, if you're reading for, let's say you're reading for Bob, and Bob gets the page. Well, while the page might relate to a person in Bob's life, it also relates to that quality that is just emerging within Bob. Maybe, Bob needs to really reclaim like his curiosity and his excitement and his adventure about the world. And or, depending on the cards around it, maybe Bob needs to calm down because Bob is getting overly restless with everything and he's completely like dissatisfied. You feel what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So there's a dual quality, right? When you read those, the court cards.
Okay. Yeah. And I have also found like, even if it does pertain sometimes to like, I found a lot of times like when I mention like, well, do you have a son? And a lot of times it's yes. And then I'll describe the son like about like how the court card would be described. And a lot of times that relates to what I'm saying too. Like they're like, yeah, that's totally how he is. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely. And that is the quality of a child. But the one thing that I would be a little bit careful or cautious with is that, so the court cards, while, for example, the king and the queen are sort of are explicit kind of genders, and not gender to say man and woman, but masculine and feminine.
Yes.
The page isn't. And in a lot of decks, you'll see that you can't even tell what the page is. So maybe expand a little bit and also see that as, a child that is genderless. It's just a child.
Okay. Good. Okay. Good. I like that.
That often will work too. Then you don't have to say like, is it your son? It might just be your child.
But sometimes if I'm right on point and it is a son, that makes me.
Yes, absolutely. look for the other young energy in the spread for that as well.
Okay, that's good. Good to know.
All right, so the Page of Cups. So here we have, again, like the naivety of this young, undeveloped, immature aspect beginning to emerge. And here we have cups, which is water. So here there's something more emotional. There is something more feeling oriented. And again, like while we immediately like to say or make the association to a relationship, it's also going to be something that is more like self-reflective, contemplative. You'll notice that a lot of the imagery with the Page of Cups, there's this, young child gazing into a cup, and there's oftentimes some sort of a fish or something that's depicted coming out of that. Do you have that in your deck?
I do. And then there's the water that's behind them, and they always, he seems to be dressed pretty like in the blue and the reds.
Yeah.
So
and so
I also feel like when it comes to the Page of Cups, I always like get the word create, the word creativity that comes to mind.
Absolutely. But again, keep in mind that all of the pages are creative. That's the initial instinct, because a child is the expression of divine creativity, right? You have a man and a woman, or sperm and an egg, and what do? You get the most creative, magical thing in the world. So they carry the essence of that creativity, but the way they'll express it is through that suit. So what kind of creativity might we see might we consider when we think about cups? Maybe something a little bit more feeling oriented, poetry, or art. There's something that will allow this person to express feeling nature. Okay,
and then what would the wands be then, their creativity? How would that?
Wands might actually be, again, like the creativity there, instincts, ideas, and similar to the swords, as we'll see, but these ideas are more instincts, the kind of ideas like, what if we did this? What if we did that? So it's like those initial ideas that instigate a plan after it. Okay. And so the other quality of that Page of Cups is also the emerging, or, the part of a personality that maybe is just beginning to open up again, right? This is ultimate vulnerability in the Page of Cups. And so for somebody that, say, has just gotten out of a bad relationship or had something, problematic or traumatic happening, this card is going to indicate for them that it's okay to take maybe a small risk in opening up again, opening up to feelings. I mean, you probably know how jaded people become when they're hurt.
Yes.
They
Yes.
close their heart. And this is the opening or the emerging of that heart.
Okay. Okay.
And so where are we? Page of Swords.
Mm-hmm.
So the Page of Swords is, again, here we have the element of the child, but now we have the mind. And the mind is in and of itself, it's curious and it's restless, just like a child is. But here there's also this need to understand everything. So I think about like the child that's asking all the questions, but why? But why? Trying to make connections.
Mm-hmm.
You also have, again, that the curiosity of the mind will often lead us into several different projects. So again, if this relates to a person, this might be somebody that, can't quite commit or make up their mind with something, and they're just open to way too many possibilities. It's the beginning of overanalyzing, if you will.
Okay. Okay. And sometimes when the Page of Swords comes up too, I think I felt like I read somewhere, and I don't know if this is something I should be careful how often I use it. Like it's oftentimes when they're like maybe getting ready to like learn something new, or like go back to school, or like take some classes on something that they've had an interest in. Have you noticed that at all, or is that something that?
No, absolutely. I mean, think about what you're saying there, right? That would be the beginning of, an intellectual endeavor. And so
Okay.
absolutely, I think that's a really good association. I'll get to in a moment too how the pages are also associated with the messengers. But
Uh,
but
uh,
that's a component of that too, is that this might be a time to start to focus your mind into something else. Maybe there's a curiosity that needs to be built upon, and school would be one of those things.
okay.
So the other part of the Page of Swords, which it's notorious for, and maybe you know this one too, is the gossip. This is often a card that indicates that there is some kind of gossip or something that's being said behind the person's back, or maybe even the person themselves are engaging in that. And again, when we think about the element of communication and the curiosity of the mind, what do people love better than, gossip and, what's going on here and there? So that's really undeveloped or immature way of expressing ourselves, our thoughts, our ideas. They're not really our own. We're just talking about other people.
Yes. Yes. And so I know this is kind of, it's on subject, but a little bit off, because just since we're talking about it being, they have a tendency to gossip.
Mm-hmm.
Would that fall under like all the court cards that are swords, or was just pretty much the
Just the
page?
Page of Swords, because
Okay.
again, when you think about like communication, the
Mm-hmm.
initial stirrings of that
Mm-hmm.
are they're immature, and that's what people are, often, if they've got nothing really profound to talk about, then they gossip.
Okay. All right. That makes
We'll see in the night, and we'll talk about this in another time. We'll see in the
yeah.
night that there can be the power to really hurt through words.
With their words.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That
But
makes
before you even have any, measure of control over your words, that's those initial stage of that Page of Swords.
okay.
And then our Page of Pentacles, and this one is probably the calmest or the most centered of all of them. The Page of
Mm-hmm.
Pentacles is one that often will indicate, a new hobby of some sort, going back to the creative part in this, something that somebody is interested in, or needs to give more attention to. It needs to be a routine or a ritual or something that they're bringing into their life.
Mm-hmm.
So as to bring about either, a better sense of security or stability in some way. So that could be literally like something related to money. It might
Yeah.
be a new health regime that we're engaged in,
Mm-hmm.
something that is just in those initial stages of committing to. Unlike we saw in all of the other pages, this page is a little bit more serious and sober.
Okay. A little bit more grounded.
Yes, a little bit more grounded. So when we think about like the kids,
Mm-hmm.
children, this is going to be like the child that is, very cautiously and thoroughly investigating a butterfly.
Okay.
Where, the Page of Swords might be like, oh, cool, the butterfly, that's really neat, and move on. Right
Mm-hmm.
here in that Page of Pentacles, we have the beginning of concentration and attention and follow through.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So as I hinted at before, the pages have long been associated with messages.
Mm-hmm.
And, the messages, again, I like to see those in terms of the suit. So let's say that there's a message related to money, or you get a ticket, or you didn't realize that you forgot to pay this bill. I gave it away. Which page would that be?
You just said pentacles,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Right. So there. Or, I mean, even that, your boss calls you in and says, hey, I want to talk to you about giving you a raise. Like, here are the little messages kind of related to money.
Okay.
May also be related something to do with your health as well. So going to the doctor, you get the checkup notice in the mail, come in and see us. We haven't seen you in a while. And so these are messages that we heed in that regard as well.
Okay.
Swords, these messages often these are actually they pertain to slander. So again, that element of somebody's been talking about you, and, or, somebody's putting something in your head. You know how if you have like an idea, or you say, I'm thinking about doing this, you've always got kind of like that one naysayer that's like, oh, but have you thought about that? And, oh, but didn't you know that this person thinks that? There's almost like this negativity bias to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's something, and I know that you speak a little bit of Spanish yourself. It's that quality, that chismoso, right? Like, you just have nothing else to say, so I've just got to say this means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There we have the swords.
Just to talk.
Exactly. Just to hear themselves talk. That's a good one. The wands we would see here, this is often some sort of a message related to, a lot of times they say travel, but also like ideas, things that you have been putting out there. So manifestation in some way, for those that are maybe more spiritually inclined, or set intentions, right? Here again is the element of fire and magic. You get a message back from the universe, or you get a message back from somebody that's like, hey, I saw your idea. I think it's great. Like, let's move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So here there is that quality of whatever the endeavor is, whatever you have been putting that intention, or you're setting your intention, you get some sort of a message back.
Okay. Now, that's how you would say it in the reading. Like, or there's a possibility that there's some message that's coming.
Yeah.
And would say it depending on what card it is, which suit it is, what that message would look like.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we will also want to consider too that the page in and of itself is a message to the person who's getting the card reading.
Yes.
I mean, it's inviting this person to develop this quality, to bring it into focus more, to nurture it, to grow it. So it's a message in that way too, but literally speaking, it will often correlate to a message.
Okay.
And then finally, like the Page of Cups, this is often a message relating to a beloved, or a relationship, a family member, somebody that you haven't talked to in a while. It's a quality of relationship there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, when you see Page of Cups, do you ever see it as like a possibility of marriage, or a possibility of moving in with one another, or a possibility of a child, anything like that ever?
I would, but I would be really mindful of the cards surrounding it, because it's so nascent, it's so in the beginning stages that, perhaps a child, like a birth or something of that sort, but like a marriage, here again, it's just kind of the beginning stages of opening our heart. So maybe rather than a marriage, like a suitor, or somebody that's interested in you, or a new relationship.
Okay.
Not so much. I would look at that more, let's say, if we were talking about the court cards, I would say that was more queen oriented.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
However, if, you've got, let's say, surrounding cards like the Two of Cups, or, for that matter, something like the Four of Wands, then, I might inquire about that a little bit more.
Okay. Alrighty.
All right. Any other questions? You feel like you have at least different sense of the pages?
Oh, definitely. For sure. That was good. I appreciate it. Now, I just will have to listen to the recording again, so that way I can, hear what we talked about instead of just being in what we talked about,
Yeah, absolutely. And I reflect on that. And just, since you're already doing readings, play around with it too. That's always the best way to learn, is by just playing around and finding your own connection to the cards.
Yes. Well, and somebody one time suggested to me, because I was struggling with some of the court cards, specifically the pages and the knights. I don't feel like the queens and the kings are as difficult to read necessarily. And the suggestion was, well, oh, just pull those cards out. And I'm like, oh no, that's just not in my nature. Like that's an incomplete deck. Like that's just not right. Then there's messages that aren't being given if you pull that out, so there's no way that was going to ever be an option for me. So
yeah, that's funny too. You say that there are messages that are being pulled out, and like quite literally pulling the messages out of the deck.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, another way to play with them is to just play with them, individually, just all of the court cards, take all 16 of them and shuffle them up really well. And then ask yourself, like, what am I in the beginning stages of right now? Or, what is it that I need to let go of in my personality? What is it that I need to integrate more of? What does this person mean to me? What does this person reflect? What does this relationship show me about myself? So if you ask specific questions related to, our personality and our development, the cards are great. They're really clear cut. It's when we try to apply them to situations that they get a little bit difficult.
Okay. That's awesome. Awesome. This is going to be really good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for your question.
And I look forward to our next session.
Yes. For those of you that are listening, I would love to answer any questions that you might have as well. So send me an email at adrian@adrianabeta.com. You can also access me on my website, but I would love to talk with you at some other point. Tarot and tea.